Hey, it's Lara here with this week's Witchy Wednesday astrology video for the week of July 10th to 16th, 2019. And we are, as I'm recording this, right in the middle of the two eclipses. In this video, we're going to talk a lot about the partial lunar eclipse that's happening in Capricorn on the 16th or 17th, depending where you live. But so that's what the focus of this video is going to be about. But before we get there, I have some other things to share with you because we have some other things going on. And of course, the eclipse isn't happening in a vacuum, right? It's in relation to some other activity that's going on. There's some conversations between other planets that are happening, and this is all relevant. So we're going to discuss all of that. Thanks so much for joining me here. And I so appreciate the interactions. I know I say this all the time, but I really want you to know that it means a lot that you're here, you're sticking around. What I have to say is resonating with a lot of you. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate your support in, leaving comments, questions, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, sharing it on social media, that kind of thing. If you'd like to join me on Facebook and Instagram, I'd love to have you there too, because I do post there more regularly. And the links to that are below. And of course, you can reach me at my website, and the link to that is below as well. Still got some changes going on in the background there that, nothing that'll be too obvious on the front, but some things, I'm adding a shopping cart and these kinds of things. So you'll see that roll out over the next little while. Okay, so enough about that. Let's get on with it here. We have Mercury and Chiron officially retrograde, and Mercury went on the 7th and Chiron on the 8th. So I talked about that in last week's video. I spoke to the Mercury retrograde and the Chiron piece for each sign. If you're interested in hearing about that and what impact that will have on you, then go back and listen to last week's video. And I talked about the solar eclipse we had in Cancer earlier in the month, which is a part of this pair, right? Part of a pairing. Remember, eclipses always come in pairs. They're part of a family of eclipses, and they come in cycles. So we're in the Cancer Capricorn family of eclipses. That's where we're at, for kind of 18 months or so, 18 to 24 months. And we've had this eclipse in Cancer, and now we're having one in Capricorn, and then later in the year, late 2019 and early 2020, we'll have another set of eclipses in those signs. And of course, we'll talk about that. I'm going to hint at that today because it's relevant. And we've got the moon in Scorpio today on Wednesday. It's entering Scorpio, and then it will enter Sagittarius on Friday and Capricorn on Monday, readying for that lunar eclipse that's happening on Tuesday, July 16th in Capricorn, and it's at 5:38 p.m. And that's Eastern Standard Time, right? Daylight Savings Time, Eastern. So you can adjust for your time zone if you're watching from somewhere else. And it's happening at 24 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. And we're going to talk about what that means as we move forward here. But one thing I want to mention before I dive into the eclipse is over the next few days, we've got Mars and Uranus squaring off. So Mars is in Leo at right now at around 6 degrees. Well, approaching 6 degrees. That's where the square is going to happen. And then so at around 6 degrees Leo, and Uranus is 6 degrees Taurus, right? So those two planets are squaring off and coming exact near the end of this week. And so we may feel this energy, especially though, like the fixed signs, right? So Leo and Aquarius and Scorpio and Taurus may feel this energy more significantly than some of the rest of us. Or if you have, planets, significant points, that kind of thing, your sun, moon, rising, around that 6-degree mark of Taurus or Leo or Aquarius, Scorpio. You'll be feeling that. So this is like, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just thought it was relevant to mention to you because these are two quite powerful planets, right? Powerful energies in the sense that Mars is about our drive and our will and our desires. It rules the sign of Aries, right? So our instincts and passion, and it's kind of, Mars is an action planet, a very yang planet, a masculine planet. And squaring off with the energy of Uranus, that is quite unpredictable, sometimes chaotic, sudden, electric, these kinds of things, right? So you can get a sense just from the words that I'm using to describe the planets, how those two energies, if their intention, might behave, right? There can be a lot of this going on. There can be some, on the shadow side, some kind of foolish risk-taking behaviors, or some impulsivity, or some aggression that, is likely to not lead to good ends. Be mindful, like don't rush during these days because, you can be a bit accident prone even under this energy. Or if you're feeling it on a more internal level, it can be this kind of like tension and anxiety almost, right? Nervous anxiety. And so a good way to discharge that, if that's the way you're feeling, is get out, do something physical, do something active, do something to discharge that energy in a healthy, non-risky way kind of thing. So that would be my advice to you. But that energy will pass, but it is with us over these next few days. Okay, so let's get talking about this eclipse that is happening in Capricorn on Tuesday the 16th, right? And we know that there's a lot going on in Capricorn and Cancer. I've been talking about this incessantly over the course of this year, even the end of the previous year. If you're listening to other astrologers, energy readers, that kind of thing, you might have a sense of that. You probably have a sense of that from them as well. It's just, and even if you're not sort of up on these things, if you're new to this, but you're particularly sensitive, you might have been feeling this, and this is putting it in context for you, making you feel a little less kind of alone in your experience, hopefully, and a little less like, it's just you, or what the hell's going on kind of thing. Because I regularly have people who know I do this kind of work, but may not be really sort of into it. I regularly have people these days either message me or come up to me and go, what the hell is going on, right? WTF kind of thing. Like I'm feeling like stuff happening, what's going on. So this can put, these videos can put that in context for you. And this Cancer Capricorn piece is this axis that's being triggered a lot over the course of this year and into 2020. And so we've been spending a lot of time talking about it, and these eclipses are highlighting that further, right? So eclipses in general are major turning points. They are watershed moments. They are times when we can have a real kind of leap in our evolution, right? In our growth. There can be things literally eclipsed out of our lives at the time of an eclipse. That can be, that can be any number of things, right? We can have, we can move to a new place. We can, relationship statuses can change. Job statuses can change. And the best way to deal with these things is not to fight what is wanting to happen, right? It may be stressful, may feel like a bit of a crisis in the moment, but Capricorn's an earth sign. This is earth energy, and it wants us to stay grounded. It wants us to have a mature and responsible approach to things, right? And so if the, proverbial shit hits the fan, that's the way to handle it. So when we have a lunar eclipse, this is a full moon, right? Solar eclipses are new moons, lunar eclipses are full moons, and they always happen in relation to where the nodes of the moon are. That's why we have eclipses. And full moons in general are times of revelation, of things coming to fruition, of insights, of endings, of release, these sorts of things. And a lunar eclipse, remember the moon rules our emotions, right? Is this time of it can be this time of real emotional catharsis, an emotional reset. And some of us may feel that more than others, depending on how this eclipse is going to impact us, right? And I'm going to get to that. We have this eclipse in conversation with Saturn and the South Node and Pluto, and also with Neptune and Venus. So there's a lot going on. So I'm going to show you the chart now. I think that's the best approach here. And then I'm going to break it down. Okay, so here's the chart for the eclipse. So at the time of the eclipse on the 16th, remember I said 16th if you're Eastern Standard Time, at around 5:38 p.m. So here's the sun at that point at 24 degrees of Cancer, right across the sky from the moon at 24 of Capricorn. And right beside the moon is Pluto. And right beside Pluto is the South Node and Saturn, right? Saturn and the South Node are like right beside each other within a degree, and Pluto is not far off. And so again, I point out all this dynamic energy here between these on this axis. Here we have Venus opposite, directly opposite Saturn at the time of the eclipse, 18 degrees, right, in Cancer, and the North Node as well, right, opposite Saturn at the time of the eclipse. And there I pointed out Mars to you. By the time of the eclipse, Mars and Uranus won't be an exact square anymore. They'll still be close, but they won't be an exact square. But there's Mars in Leo, Uranus in Taurus, right? And Chiron in Aries, which I spoke to in last week's video. And I spoke to Mercury retrograde in last week's video as well in Leo. And then I want to point out, because this is also in conversation with the eclipse, Eris in Aries at 24 degrees, right? Which is the exact degree that the sun and the moon are at. So Eris is squaring exactly this eclipse. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. I spoke about Eris in a few videos ago in regards to this square to this Cancer Capricorn energy. So I won't go into that detail, but I will talk a little bit about it here. So, and then of course we have Jupiter up here, right, in Sagittarius, still retrograde. And we have Neptune in Pisces, still retrograde. And Neptune is the bright spot in a sense here, lending us some support during this eclipse. And I'm going to talk to you about that because it is in sextile to the energies in Capricorn and in trine to the energies in Cancer. Okay, and those are supportive conversations. So that's the chart, so you can get a visual. Now let's break this down a little here. And before I do that, I will let you know that yes, this will likely be in 2 parts again this week. It seems to be working well to have a longer intro and not having to rush through that and then moving to a new video to go through the signs. So there will very, very likely be a part 1 and a part 2 again, where all the signs will be in the next, when I go through the signs in part 2. For now, that's how I'm working it. We'll see how things unfold. But so we've got this full moon, which is partial lunar eclipse, right? Conjuncting Pluto, Saturn, and the North Node. And this energy maybe hinting, right? Maybe hinting at what is this big deal that is coming to a head or coming to pass in terms of the Saturn Pluto exact conjunction that's happening in early January 2020 that you hear me talk about all the time, and likely other astrologers too, right? So that we may get a bit of a hint, a bit of insight into what the bigger picture is about in terms of that energy around the time of this eclipse. And with Saturn conjuncting the South Node is about our past, about what we're really experienced in, about what wants to be released or needs letting go of so that we can move on, right? We take that experience, we learn from it, we move on optimally. So there's a lot of deep change going on, but much of that is happening under the surface, or perhaps is not being really seen, or we're not consciously aware of it at this point in time, because these planets are in retrograde, right? And that's an inward, that's kind of an under the surface energy. And so while the full moon is illuminating this during the time of the eclipse, we might get a glimpse, right? We might get a bit of a glimpse as to what this is about, what this energy is about for all of us individually, right? In each individual's life, but also in terms of humanity, in terms of the bigger picture as well. And then the conjunction to Pluto is an amplification, right? An amplification of some intense emotions potentially. And a bringing to light of perhaps some deeply buried psychological baggage and trauma, potentially that may those things may bubble up at the time of this lunar eclipse. And when I say at the time of, please remember, please keep in mind, I'm not saying to you that on July 16th at 5:38 p.m. something's going to happen to everybody. That's not what I'm saying here at all. What I'm saying is, we're in eclipse season. Lots of people who are particularly sensitive tend to get a sense of the energy or feel the energy more profoundly in the lead up to these events, as the aspects are what we call applying. And then when the actual event happens, it's a bit of a release or a relief, right? Other people, it may happen closer to the date. If something is to transpire, it may be closer to the date. But these energies ripple out on either side of the event. And eclipse energy tends to last, like whatever transpires, that story unfolds over the course of about 6 months, right? Until the next set of eclipses. And that's all part of a larger story. So that's how it works. And the next set of eclipses is in late December and early January, as I mentioned to you. And Saturn and Pluto will be direct by then, right? Saturn goes direct on September 18th and Pluto on October 3rd. And so whatever's happening under the surface at the time of this eclipse and during this time, that may be further revealed. It may be revealed to us at the end of 2019, early 2020, right? We'll get the full picture, so to speak. And just a bit of an aside, the moon, when we're talking about world astrology or mundane astrology, it represents the public, the people. And so on a larger scale, this might be quite telling when we look at this axis of Cancer Capricorn. It's like the public versus authority, the public versus government kind of thing. This is the axis this is happening on, right? And so it will be interesting to see what transpires. Okay, what else do I want to say about this? Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about the energy of Capricorn, where this eclipse is playing out, because when I spoke to the solar eclipse in Cancer, I did that. So I talked about the Cancer energy a little bit more in detail. And so I'll do that with Capricorn here. So the energy of Capricorn, Capricorn is a cardinal earth sign, right? So the cardinal signs are those signs that are the initiators. They begin the seasons, literally. The four cardinal signs are the signs that mark the beginning of the four seasons. And so it has that kind of energy to it, right? And it's an earth sign, so it's grounded, it's practical. It deals with the material world, the world of the five senses. It's about our ambitions, right? Capricorn is a very ambitious sign. It's the sign of the goat, the sea goat, actually, climbing the mountain, never being deterred from reaching the precipice, kind of thing. It's about our version of success. It's about our reputation and our status and our, how we want to be known in the world, how we want to be seen, or what we want to be known for. Like, it's the energy of, Capricorn and the 10th house, which Capricorn rules the 10th house, the top of the chart, right? The precipice of our chart. When we look at in the natural zodiac here, I'll just show you the chart again. You can see Capricorn is at the very top of the chart, right? It's that goat climbing to the top, right? It wants to reach the top kind of thing. Highest ambitions. And so it's about the legacy, the public legacy we wish to leave, right? What are we going to be known for when we leave this plane? It represents our career and our true vocation. It represents authority, whether that be our own authority, right? Or outside authority, external authority figures, like the father or whatever parent is or was the authority kind of thing, and other authority figures. It is the energy of the divine masculine, right? The divine father, whereas Cancer is the divine mother. This axis of Cancer Capricorn, you've heard me refer to in past videos as the axis of parenting, right? Mother, father. And that can be self-parenting as well, right? Be who you needed when you were younger kind of energy. Capricorn optimally is about being the boss of your own life, being the authority of your own life, right? Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn wants us to take responsibility. It wants us to follow the rules, get the job done, take the practical steps, don't take shortcuts. It wants us to master our lives and to gain wisdom, right? That kind of thing. And we reap the rewards if we do the work when it comes to Saturn. But Saturn will put obstacles and boundaries in our way and that kind of thing, right? And so the one thing I want to say about this that I don't want to forget to say to you is when I talk about like being the authority of your own life, being the boss of your own life, and Capricorn energy, Saturn energy, we have this misconception, I think, in our society that being mature and being responsible and taking, responsibility and being the authority and the boss of your own life means this traditional, like we have this idea that it's this very traditional, like, you go, you go to school, you study hard, you get good grades, you get a good job, you work in a profession or you work for a company, and clock in and clock out and you pay the bills and you do everything that sort of traditional way, the way our parents and our grandparents did it, and that sort of thing. And if you're a person that doesn't work for, that doesn't mean that you're not responsible. It doesn't mean that you're not taking accountability and responsibility for your own life. It doesn't mean you're not, mature. It doesn't mean any of those things. We have this weird idea that we need to kind of, and this is part of what the Saturn Pluto energy is about for us. We need to reevaluate those traditions and those old structures and methods of doing things, and seeing, what success means and that kind of thing. Those are changing, and that's okay. But it may be very uncomfortable for some of us. So whether that be, for example, I'll just throw an example out there. Maybe you're somebody who has, lived a very traditional existence in that regard. I mean, that was me for quite some time, where, did all the school and then some, and got good grades, and, had multiple jobs, and had a career, a very well-respected kind of career in teaching and that sort of thing. And it was not working for me, right? It just wasn't working for me. And so, but if you're somebody that kind of grew up with that sense of that's what responsibility is, and that's what you should do, that's what responsible folks do and mature folks do. And you've got kids, millennials, for example, who are just not subscribing to that version of success anymore. It may be really anxiety producing for you, but you know what? That's okay. We have things to learn. From those folks. They are redefining what success looks like, what the true meaning of success is, what, what traditions and structures and rules are outdated and need to be changed for the good of all, right? So just keep that in mind, when we're thinking about this Capricorn energy being the authority and the representing sort of like the traditional hierarchical structures and patriarchy and that kind of thing, but traditional job roles and all of that. It doesn't mean that that's how it has to be in order for us to be successful, quote unquote. We have to define what success means to us outside of perhaps, the traditions we've been brought up in, the societal expectations and structures and the familial, expectations and all of that. And so it's a tricky time for many of us, right, to navigate that. But I just wanted to speak a little bit about that. And lastly, the axis that these eclipses are happening on, right? It's the axis of security, our emotional security, Cancer, versus our material security, Capricorn. And how can we balance those things? Right? How can we bring those things into harmony and alignment? If I'm out there doing a job every day that I absolutely can't stand, that's stressing me out to no end, that's making me physically and mentally unwell, and I'm bringing that home to my family, then is that really worth the material security? Am I compromising my emotional security too much for that? And the flip side can be true as well. Am I being so coddled that I am not stepping up, growing up, taking responsibility for my own life? Am I, 35 years old living in my parents' basement kind of thing, right? Like something's got to give there. So these are the kinds of things that that this eclipse, in a very general sense, kind of highlight for us, right, on that axis. The other thing I want to say, there's a few more things. When I looked at the chart, I noticed that at the time of this eclipse, there's no air in the chart. There's nothing in the air signs at the time of the eclipse. The energy is strongest in fire and earth. Those are balanced. And then to a little lesser degree, water. And so this is about, it's not about thinking, right? That's the air. That's the quality of air. It's about trusting our guts, trusting our instincts, and staying grounded in that earth energy, right? The instinctual approach to things, that's the fire energy, and staying grounded is the earth energy. So, following your instincts and your desires and your passions, but doing that in a grounded, practical way. Approaching what you want in that way. So it's like about being fired up, but like you're fired up to kind of take charge of things, to take action, but the action needs to be grounded action, right? So hopefully that makes sense to you. So it's not so much about our thoughts and our perceptions at the time of this eclipse, mentally, meaning it's not about our mental constructs and that sort of thing. And with Mercury retrograde, right, there's a lot of turning inward of that energy and a slowing down of that energy, as I spoke about in last week's video. So we've also got, which I pointed out to you on the chart, the North Node in Cancer is conjunct Venus at the time of this eclipse, or Venus is conjunct the North Node. And this is, when I contemplate this, I think this is about your heart, your feelings, being your guide, right? Again, more than your thoughts, your mind. So those Venus is really about like the heart, right? In many ways, and what we love, what fulfills us in that sense, and what we desire. And so it's about letting that be our guide and guiding us to our true north, which is really what the North Node represents, right? So other things that this speaks to are the healing of the feminine in some way, right? The divine feminine. Really looking at and getting a sense of, like, what do I desire? What am I passionate about? What do I love? These sorts of things. How can it be easier, right? Venus wants to make things easier for us where she can. How can it be more pleasurable, more loving, more gentle, more beautiful and nourishing? How can we receive as much as we give? These sorts of things. And Venus is there to kind of help us with that. And, again, the Mercury being retrograde, at the time of the eclipse, it's retrograde in Leo, very much having to do with our heart, listening to the messages from your heart, your feelings, your emotions, and your intuition kind of thing. Then we've got the eclipse, like I mentioned to you and pointed out, exactly squaring Eris, right? And Eris is the goddess of chaos and discord and strife, these sorts of things. And I spoke to the mythology of Eris in a previous video, but very, very briefly, Eris was the goddess not invited to a wedding, and so she felt jilted, she felt ignored, she was upset by this, and so she kind of played a prank and threw this apple into the wedding party, that said "to the fairest" on it, and then some of the other goddesses were fighting over it, etc., etc. Eventually, that action began the Trojan War. That's the short version of the story. So, with Eris exactly squaring the eclipse at 24 degrees, Eris is at 24 degrees Aries, we may see women's issues being, coming further to the light. And when I think about women's issues, I can't think about women's issues without thinking about children's issues as well. We may see more of that coming to light. Eris is the frustrated feminine, essentially. She's struggling to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. Last week I showed you that Truth Bomb by Danielle Laporte, and I posted it on Facebook and Instagram as well. We all want to be seen and heard, no exceptions. That's Eris, right? And this sort of emotional pain that we feel from feeling like an outsider, from not being seen or heard, feeling sort of less than, feeling ignored, that can lead to anger and frustration, and a fight to be recognized in some way. This is about the challenge to kind of, traditional patriarchal authority. And please know, when I say patriarchal authority, I'm not just talking about men, right? When we talk about masculine and feminine energy, we all have this within us. There are some women that exude masculine energy and some men who exude feminine energy. It's about the balance of those things. Everybody has those things in those energies within them. But it's about challenging the status quo, right? This Eris square. And the challenge, right? A square is a challenge. You need to take action at the time of a square. It challenges us to take action because we need to pick a direction. Something's got to give. It can't, sort of implode on itself. And it's about, this returning of the balance of power, right? Like returning that to balance between the masculine and the feminine. So that's the Eris square piece. And then we've got Neptune, as I pointed out to you, bringing us this sense of compassion, of love, of understanding, of, spirituality to the energies of the eclipse, because it is sextiling Saturn, Pluto, South Node, that Capricorn energy, and trining Venus right down there in Cancer. And so this is a message to us to approach any difficulties that may transpire with love and compassion and receptivity and perhaps a spiritual leaning. And spiritual doesn't necessarily mean religious, right? Please understand that. So when I go through each of the signs in the next video, I'm not quite done here yet, but when I do that, I will speak to the house that the eclipse is happening in, which is Capricorn, keeping in mind that this is an axis we're talking about. Last eclipse was in Cancer, opposite the chart. This one is in Capricorn, right? So, but I will speak to where Capricorn is in the chart, what's happening there. And I will also just briefly touch on where Neptune's sitting, so you can get a sense of where some support, some relief, some compassion may be offered to you, right, or available to you at the time of the eclipse and whatever's transpiring for you there. But this eclipse is particularly impacting those folks that have planets, points, angles, so sun, moon, rising, what we call a stellium of planets, so a cluster of planets. I'm going to give this a wide orb because we've got the eclipse, but we've got Saturn, Pluto, Venus all playing into this here, right? So I'd say anywhere between 15 and 30 degrees of the cardinal signs, you're likely to feel this more than others. And the cardinal signs, again, are Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, right? So because you may wonder why I say that. And it's like, okay, because those planets are in square to each other. So when we've got activity happening in Cancer and Capricorn, it also impacts Aries and Libra because they're in square. Cancer, Capricorn are in opposition, and Aries and Libra are in square to Cancer and Capricorn. So that's why. And so, for example, I have a stellium of planets in Aries, and I have a conjunction between Saturn and Venus right at 24 degrees. And so this is happening in exact square to my Saturn-Venus conjunction in Aries in the 8th house. So, and that happens to be where Eris is currently sitting too, right on top of that conjunction for me. So I brought up this, notion of sacred anger a while back in a few videos ago. And that's very much something that has transpired for me over this last while. Challenges with authority and my own authority too. Obstacles, barriers, difficulties, responsibilities regarding, relationships, different kinds of relationships, worth, self-worth, values, enjoying life, right? Having fun in life. Like life has felt, quite truthfully, there are definitely some high points and some things that are really enjoyable, but also a lot of work. Like there's intentional breaks being taken because there is so much feels like work right now. So it's hard to have fun even these days. And I've got even stuff regarding physical beauty, just with this Venus Saturn kind of thing going on, like aging related stuff, right? I'm at my Chiron return. I've had some different health issues pop up, that sort of thing, including an ongoing eye issue, Aries. Right? That's where the stellium is for me. It's where it's squaring the eclipse is squaring that point. Aries rules the face and the eyes. I've had an ongoing eye issue, so, and some other stuff. So I'm just, again, I'm telling you this so you can kind of get like a sense of how this stuff plays out in real life, right? So we are going to move on to the next video, and I'm going to speak to each of the signs, the Cancer eclipse through each of the signs. And I will give you, before I go into each of the signs, a sort of a little kind of, intro, a little blurb about this is what the energy is bringing to whatever area of your chart, right? So that's what we're going to do in the next video. Thanks for sticking it out with me here. I hope this intro has been helpful. And, let me know how things play out for you during the eclipse. I would love to hear. And just take good care, right? It's really important to nurture ourselves around this time. We're living in interesting times, no doubt. And we really need to look after ourselves. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.